Hello, beautiful soul. Welcome to Soul Love, a channel about the twin flame phenomenon. I'm Mafalda, and in this video, I will be discussing the core wound activation component of the journey and all the shadow work that needs to be done, the inner work that needs to be done in order to come into union for twins. And I will be prefacing this video with a distinction between monadic twins and split soul twins in terms of the push-pull and the runner-chaser dynamic, because that distinction does play a bit of a role in terms of how the core wound activation and all that healing work actually plays out in these two types of journeys. So, welcome, beautiful, beautiful soul. If you are on this twin flame journey, then you have been called to really step it up in this lifetime. This journey is of magnificent proportions. And I truly feel called to step into this arena to offer support and guidance, because I feel like there isn't enough quality content and readily available knowledge out there to help twins navigate their journeys. And since I am a twin and I am on the journey, I know from personal experience how challenging this can be. And so I really am here to be of service and to offer guidance, insight, wisdom that will help you shift out of that deep pain and suffering and longing and yearning that is so characteristic of the twin flame journey. So without further ado, let's talk about monadic twins and split soul twins in terms of the difference between the push-pull or runner-chaser dynamic. So when it comes to monadic twins, this dynamic tends to be less pronounced than with split soul twins. And the reason being that because split souls split after they entered this time-space matrix, that split is much more painful in a way, because their soul wasn't a whole soul before they met. And so it does feel like they've literally lost their other half. Now, of course, at the higher levels, monadic twins are also one soul. But in this case, we're talking about the 13th dimension and above. So it's much less of a pronounced split. And so that yearning, that pain of wanting your other half to complete you is not as strong. So monadic twins tend to chase and run less. Both twins, or both types of twins, absolutely feel the need to run because the energy is incredibly intense. And if you are watching this, you will most likely be the awakened twin, the 5D twin, and so you'll feel the need to run away from yourself and therefore run toward the connection. And if you are unawakened to the connection, so you are the 3D matrix twin, then you'll feel the need to run away from yourself by running away from the connection and all that it's bringing up for you. And so monadic twins do feel that need to chase. They will, or run accordingly, but they will alchemize it much sooner. Because remember, since monadic twins tend to be star seeds from other star systems that have come to Earth on interplanetary, intergalactic mission, they are more awakened to begin with. So their level of consciousness by the time they meet their twin in this lifetime is higher than split souls. And so it takes them less time, let's say, if we'd like to put it this way, to remember who they really are and what they came here to do. And so that also settles down the addictive energy a bit. Whereas with split souls, there is just this really strong yearning to get back together, to become whole again. And the mission is so much more about that, coming into union, becoming that whole soul again, and then continuing on the ascension path from there, but not necessarily in this lifetime. So you can see how that would drive up the addictive energy and therefore fuel a lot more of runner chaser behavior amongst split souls. And the reason why I wanted to discuss this is that when it comes to split souls, once that addictive energy is brought down, once you've worked on balancing your masculine and feminine energies within and coming into inner union, then outer physical union can take place and occur much more smoothly. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's going to happen, because split soul twins also have a lot more separation consciousness to deal with and to get through. And they're a lot more out of balance to begin with. So that process of energy balancing isn't going to be as clear cut as it might be for monadics. So this doesn't mean that the journey is shorter for split souls than it is for monadics. Please don't get me wrong on that one. Each journey is absolutely unique and individual, and you will soon find that placing time frames on this journey is pretty much useless. We are here truly to get ourselves out of the matrix and out of time and space, and living from that paradigm of time and space. So that's not necessarily the case. But once that's done, once that work is done, it's much more smooth for them to come into union, into physical union. That again doesn't necessarily mean that they will be ascending. So it'll depend then on how much they progress on their soul's path upon union. When it comes to monadics though, and the activation of the core wounds, monadics will balance their energy a lot faster, and it'll be a lot easier for them because, remember, they were much more of a whole soul upon meeting, and they're also being activated at higher levels of consciousness, and they usually have avatar level consciousness, and so they're at the spiritual teacher level when it comes to consciousness. So they'll more easily work their way through this addictive energy, calm it down. What happens is that their core wound activation goes much deeper because there's a lot more karmic energy to work through. And we're talking past lives, intergalactic wars. So you can see that what needs to be cleared for monadic twins to come into union in this life is a lot more complex and a lot deeper. So you can see these differences. When it comes to split soul twins, the core wound activation will be much more linked to this life, or at least much more consciously linked to this life, because split soul twins won't necessarily be coming into their spiritual gifts to the point that they're accessing their Akashic records spontaneously, etc. So those core wounds will be much more tied to this life, and there will be a lot less conscious awareness of what's being cleared when it comes to the ego. Also, the ego itself doesn't need to be dismantled to the same extent as for monadics, and so that core wound activation will be different for split souls. It's not that it won't be as intense. There will be less to get through, not because they're more advanced souls or because there's less separation consciousness, but because it's not necessarily in their soul's path to get to higher levels or as high as monadics. We're talking 8th dimension, to leave the matrix. It's not in their soul's plan necessarily. And so they don't need to clear as much ego. They just need to get themselves into the fifth dimension, which is love. Whereas monadics at this point, and given all the interference that's happening at this time, actually have to come into the sixth, seventh dimension and above to be able to sustain union in the physical. So there's a lot more distortion at that level, at the karmic level, at the ancestral level, in simultaneous lives, so past lives, and also at the intergalactic level. So you see how they're different. It's like there's more to clear with the monadics in terms of the wounding, because the wounding is much deeper, more complex. And monadics have had like lifetimes and lifetimes prior to even coming into this time-space matrix or incarnating on Earth. So there's stuff from intergalactic crises, like I was mentioning before as well. So there's a lot more distortion to clear because we need to get higher. In the case of split souls, they need to clear less because they're not at that level yet, and so they don't need to get to the eighth dimension in this life. But there's a lot more separation consciousness. And so the level of awareness from which you're starting off is lower. So the push-pull and the runner-chaser dynamic is going to be much more intense. And the last thing I want to mention about this topic is that for monadics, the core wound activation is going to be very intense and very painful. And we're talking about betrayal of lifetimes and lack of lifetimes. However, because they're much more conscious, they're more aware, and so there's less meanness and attacking each other, even though they can't be together. So the core wound activation is really, really painful, but there's more awareness of what's happening, and so less need to fight each other, and that also feeds less of the runner-chaser, push-pull dynamic. That's not necessarily the case for split souls that tend to get a bit more caught up in the stories and so tend to attack each other a bit more coming from the lower levels of consciousness. And so there's more meanness and more aggressive no contact, more aggressive ghosting, whereas monadics tend to be able to have a little bit more of communication, then again, because they have a lot less of that push-pull addictive energy that's building the wall between them, not being able to communicate in the physical. The wall that's keeping them separate from each other has a lot more to do with disembodied beings, lower entities from other planets and other star systems, and it's just a little bit more complex. So overall, I hope this video helped you in some way, in some form or another. Do let me know if you resonate with this in the comments. I really would love to hear your thoughts on this. And let me know if you have any questions, any requests, if you'd even like to share your story or your experience on the journey. This is such an intense, completely life-changing, transformational journey. So it's so beautiful to be able to connect and share different perspectives and different experiences of those on the journey. So if you feel called to do that, that would be so, so welcome. And if you need any more guidance on the journey, I am also so passionate and happy to serve in this way. So you can also contact me. All my details are below if you'd like to find out more about how I can support you and help you on the journey. And last but not least, if you do enjoy the content that I've been creating, I just started, but if you have been enjoying, please do like and subscribe. It helps support the channel, and most importantly, it helps get the message across. And I'm sure, as you know, there really is a strong need for that at the moment, because a lot of people struggle to find quality information and wisdom sharing from those who are genuinely on the journey and here to help guide. So without further ado, thank you so much for watching. I wish you a lovely, lovely day. Much, much love.